Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest version of Tales from Outer Space, where I take an HFY story from somewhere around the internet and read it aloud for your enjoyment. All the relevant links are down below. Like, subscribe, and all that YouTube comf to help this video and channel grow. Anyways, as always, I hope that you enjoy. I would just like to thank the following Tier 5 patrons and channel members for supporting the channel: FallenAngel, BuzzKillington, Datamagnet, and Bob the Dragon. Thank you again. And now, on to the story. Story number 1. Horse Soldiers, written by Rough C. I stood at the podium on the center of the stage, staring at the audience through my empty sockets. Humans! The word rang clearly through the auditorium as the projector sprang to life. The screen behind me cycled through images in unison with my commands. See the warriors that revere me. The human sat atop a golden brown horse. There was a series of black feathers glued on the 2 wooden supports, which were in turn affixed to his back. At his right hand, he brandished a spear with a 2-tailed red flag tied around its neck. On each prong was a crude depiction of a snake, slithering its way to the weapon's tip. Next, an image of a man wearing a helmet, its tip tapered to a curved point and its base lined with fur. A grey pelt provided his upper body with respite from the same cold that had caused icicles to form on his long, drooping moustache. Lastly, a painting of a battle between men clad in coats of deep blue and those who wore bright red. Explosions and fire littered the fields as the 2 armies clashed in. A combination of hatred, fear, and anger etched onto the faces from both sides. Watch them rise! The image gave way to a video of a group of humans stood back to back. They tried in vain to hold against the tide, sweeping over them from every single angle. Crack! Snap! Gunshots merged with screams to create a symphony of suffering as the soldiers fell one by one. Eventually, a company of brown men on horseback erupted from the tree line, riding down the final few US soldiers still standing and claiming their scalps as trophies of war. And watch them fall. Native American men, women, and children stood shoulder to shoulder, an aura of defiance and anger about them. A gun suddenly went off when one of the US soldiers attempted to disarm a native warrior, firing harmlessly into the air. Yet chaos ensued as soldiers fired at combatants and non-combatants indiscriminately, reverting to little more than animals in the confusion. I watched stoically as son grabbed the hand of his mother, whose eyes had begun to glass over. I heard the lies he gently whispered to her ears, assurances of safety and comfort, even as his heart knew that I had welcomed her to the final journey. The audience muttered to themselves. Now watch them desperate. There was a loud clinking and clanking when a man in scale armor fell face first on the hard, frosted-over ground. He drew his blade and, with the last remnants of strength, used it to claw upwards. Now standing, he warily approached the horse in front of him before nicking open a vein in its throat. The mare was too tired to fight back and just stood there as he planted his lips on her wound, disgust contorting his features. Eventually, he gave into gnawing hunger, hounding his stomach, and started to suck greedily. Now watch them cruel! The sounds of idling engine disturbed the silence of the night. Muffled conversation came from the decrepit door leading to a basement. I watched as 11 men with guns drawn dismounted and followed a man down the dusty steps. The charge of the soon-to-be executed royal family rung clearly through the dark in ironic juxtaposition to the hushed exclamations of surprise. The previous tranquility of twilight was then shattered by gunshots and screaming. Eventually, the harsh cries of pain subsided and were instead substituted with the efficient slish-slash of the bayonet carving their way through flesh and bone. I noted satisfactorily that horror was written on the faces of all those in attendance. Observe their skill. A video of 100 Mamluks riding swiftly atop chestnut-colored horses began to play. The camera slowly panned over to a group of routing crusaders as the Arabs that were within view drew their composite bows. "Headlock!" the leading horseman cried, signaling his company to let loose. Tens of arrows masterfully found their way to the flesh hidden by the heavy plate of the enemy, felling them in an instant. I kept the video going as volley after volley reduced the routing force to a mere handful of their original number. Observe their bravery. The characteristic screech of artillery filled the chamber as the ground on the display screen erupted into a shower of dirt. The blown rain stained shining helmets, while cannons tore holes into horse and man alike, sparing little thought for the armor of the living or the cries of the dying. Orders and curses echoed in French and English as the infernal whistling continued. Man after man was chewed up by the cycle of carnage and spat up either dead or broken. Yet those who remained standing still charged on. I knew each man walked a mental tightrope, where fear meant failure and forfeit of his life to me. Observe them destitute. Metal leviathans thundered their way over hastily dug fortifications. Bullets ricocheted off shiny steel plating, and in response, the behemoth's 6-pounder guns belched hellfire at those who had dared to challenge it. A regiment of cavalry had managed to envelop and disable the landship, but it suffered heavy losses in the process. Before they could recover, an eerie man-made bird flew low overhead and delivered a black, cylindrical object in the middle of the formation. Limbs went flying in every direction, while any survivors were swiftly gunned down by camouflage machine gun emplacements. With the horsemen wiped out, the era of their dominance came to an end. Finally, observe them survive. I cast my eyes towards the onlookers once again and saw their horror transform to terror. A few of them stood up to leave. A relatively tame series of short clips played, each depicting the ever-present horses easily crossed different types of terrain that would have been impossible for anything else. Saddled on the horses were fearsome-looking men, carrying menacing guns slung around their shoulders. Perspiration beaded along their forehead as they sat atop the snow-white fur of the horses, looking afar with some kind of mirror lens contraption before digging their heels and galloping onwards. Satisfied, I turned off the projector and began to speak. The creators have given me the task of ferrying all sentient life in the galaxy to the Alum al-Mithal at the moment of their passing. However, she has also charged me with the care of a particular species, just as she has done for your caretakers. Humans. Many of them are dedicated themselves to me, some seeking ways to prevent me, others seeking ways to ease me, and the rest seeking ways to worship me. At this, there was an audible gasp. The horse soldiers are amongst those who revere me, warriors that have given over their lives to the exaltation and acceleration of my inevitability. Thus, on this day, I honor them with a presentation of their history. Before I take my leave, however, I have but one thing to say to anyone foolish enough to seek war against the humans. I am death, and humanity are my champions. End of story. Story number 2. The Purpose of Pets, written by This Is My Phone Though. Many of my colleagues insist that humans' habit of keeping pets is purely the result of an overactive bonding mechanism meant for the young. While I do not discount this as a factor, I would ask that you consider how many of their pets are predators. I was invited to a human nest to watch some of their somehow bloodless blood sports. I was informed that there would be flesh covered in irritants, along with a mildly poisonous drink meant for ingestion. I had intended to humor the human to learn more about the nesting habits. I did not intend for their pets to be the focus, but they are all I could focus on, and let me tell you why. When I arrived at the nest, I could hear alarms sounding off by several animals. A dog is a common pet, descended from a predator that used pack hunting tactics. You know this, of course, but you might not know that dogs have various alarms for new stimulus. The humans barely noticed, but I ask you, would they have noticed if I had not been invited? The larger dogs outside would have been worrying enough, but there was a smaller one that seemed to live much closer to the humans. I say small, but still a third my size at least, and the small dog had slammed his feet on the ground, vocally alerted everyone around that a stranger had arrived at the nest, and expelled air from its nostrils in a sneeze that I am told is an expression of excitement. I see some of you are unsettled, but understand that this is the easy part. Many of you will know how unnerving it is to feel a set of unseen eyes on you. Most species have evolved senses enough to pick up on subtleties that are hard to articulate. I felt watched from the moment I entered the nest. I would tell you of the cats. Cats are small carnivores that, apparently, domesticated themselves. They ate the things that ate the humans' food. They did this not in groups, but as solitary stalkers. I scanned every inch of every room I occupied in the nest, desperate to find what was watching me, only to find a small animal tucked into a specially made tower of pockets occupying the corner of the room. I was almost comforted, but then another cat leapt onto one of the seated humans, who reacted with mild delight. How many cats do you think they called the nest home? 8, and I only spotted 1. The relationship between humans and many of their pets are far deeper rooted in symbiosis than we are prepared to accept. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed, and if you do, please consider supporting the author, even by popping over and leaving a thumbs up or a nice comment, just to show your appreciation for the story. However, if you wish to support this channel, there are links down below which will help immensely. I will see you all in the next one, and until then, I hope that you have a fantastic day. Cheers.